Centrist comedian Bill Maher dedicated a considerable portion of the most recent episode of his show to shredding and debunking Republican lies about President Biden's record. Even as new evidence suggests that the president's legislative agenda is actually disproportionately benefiting red states. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert buttons before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to play in this video. I'll say this, because we've done multiple videos about Bill Maher this year, and I think that this new season of Real Time with Bill Maher, knock on wood, it's actually been pretty good in terms of like some really solid segments and guests. Bill Maher himself, for me, is a bit of a mixed bag because even though clearly he prefers the Democratic Party to the Republican Party and he's very anti-Trump and he's unapologetic about that, I also think he is unjustifiably concerned with culture war nonsense that I just don't care about. And it's really frustrating. But perhaps because it's an election year, he seems to have regained a bit of his focus, and I like some of the segments. And in this most recent one, he takes Republicans to task as Bill Maher can with his wit and his acerbic nature, and he just shreds so many of their lies. The whole segment's great. We're only going to play a couple of clips, which I think are the most important, and then we'll unpack them together.
But facts are facts. For months, we've been treated to a steady stream of very good economic news. Unemployment is low. The stock market is high. We're investing billions in a green energy economy, only minutes after it was too late. Every single economist thought we'd be in a recession by now. No, job growth keeps going up. Everyone who wants a job can find one, except Nikki Haley. Inflation is down to normal levels. Home ownership is up. GDP way up. Our economy came back from the pandemic and outperformed all of our peer nations by margins that are not even close. Or as the American Enterprise Institute says, Joe Biden and the Fed have completely ruined the U.S. economy.
Right? This is something that we've been talking about, that the macroeconomic metrics of the economy under President Biden are just objectively good. Right? In many cases, objectively better than they ever were under Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who, by the way, inherited an incredibly good economy, a resurgent economy from Barack Obama. But again, it's so interesting to see Republicans try to gerrymander all this. They don't want to give Obama credit for anything that happened under Trump, right? Just like time began anew and Donald Trump built the economy from the ground up. But then you can't give Donald Trump any of the blame for the last year in office because that was COVID. So we can only count the first 3 years. And actually, the economy is so good under President Biden right now, as we've discussed, Donald Trump has been repeatedly trying to take credit for it, these key economic metrics. Well, they're doing this because they suspect that I will win in November. That's how good the economy is, because rather than smack talking it, he's pivoted and saying, actually, it's really good and it's good because of me. And listen, as frustrating as it is, very little of this right now has translated to economic support for the president, but it's actually going in the right direction because consumer sentiment is starting to get really positive about the economy. And that's huge if President Biden wants to win re-election. So Bill Maher is right to point this out. He does it again in this other clip. And this time he calls out specific Republican legislators like Marsha Blackburn and Lauren Boebert.
And Senator Marsha Blackburn says Joe Biden has destroyed U.S. energy independence, apparently by producing record amounts of energy of all kinds and more than at any time under Trump. There are numbers for this stuff. Biden's environmental left hates him because he auctioned off 73 million acres in the Gulf of Mexico for drilling and approved the Willow Project on the North Slope of Alaska. We pump more oil than Russia does now, more than Saudi Arabia. Or as Lauren Boebert explains, under Biden, we are back to being dependent on the Middle East again.
Right. All they do is lie. I remember vividly, like the energy independence stuff just kind of hits home for me because I started my political commentary on TikTok, and it was shortly after President Biden was inaugurated. And as he presided over the vaccine rollout, the economy opened back up. People were traveling more. Demand was high for gas. Supply was low because there was relatively little production. And these oil producers, ExxonMobil and others were raking in record profits, right? Because again, demand was high, supply was low. But Biden was blamed for the high gas prices, and Republicans bent over backwards, tied themselves into knots to try to blame Biden for it, as though there was some magic lever that the president could pull to lower gas prices, and selfishly, he was actually increasing it. Not only does that lever not exist, but even if it did exist, why would Biden pull the lever knowing that it would make people mad and make people upset with him? Makes no sense, but that's just Republican lies for you. It's incredibly stupid and cultish. Fact of the matter is, as Bill Maher points out, as I pointed out, oil production, domestic energy production is at record highs, higher than it ever was under Donald Trump. And as a matter of fact, the progressive left is justifiably furious with President Biden because they see it as a betrayal of, a responsible climate agenda. Now, I would argue, while there is truth to that, and you can rightly criticize the president for it, on the other hand, the president also, in his Inflation Reduction Act, arranged for record, unprecedented levels of investment and spending with respect to climate change initiatives, green energy initiatives, renewable energy, and things like that. So it's a mixed bag, which means that Biden is still preferable to a Republican by far. But again, Bill Maher is pointing out, listen, there are facts and figures, and he's basically co-opting the Ben Shapiro aphorism, the maxim that facts don't care about your feelings, gang. It's true, and Republicans just simply don't have the facts on their side. But they do have the perception. And as we've talked about, whether we like it or not, perception matters infinitely more. Feelings do matter more than facts, even if we would prefer it to be different, which is why the burden is on Democrats, is on Biden, is on those of us who are politically engaged, who don't want Republicans to win elections, to make the case and align the facts with the feelings. Now, I also said that there was some recent evidence, recent reporting about red state economies. And it's true, based on all macroeconomic metrics, red states are doing disproportionately high. I think it's like a disproportionate number of red states right now under President Biden are doing very well when you consider the top 18 performers. Now, how much of that is relevant to Biden himself? Well, you have mixed notions on this because, as we talked about, the president of the United States is the single most important and influential and powerful person on planet Earth, whether we like it or not, right? But they're not God, right? They don't have a magic wand or a magic lever that they can do to completely shift, a national economy, let alone a global economy. But there is some evidence, there is a good argument to be made that President Biden's legislative agenda is disproportionately benefiting red states. So an economist, last name Hornberg, rebuked the notion, this is from ABC's reporting, rebuked the notion that Biden's policies have little to do with the particularly strong performance among red states, citing legislative achievements that in some cases have disproportionately benefited red states. In the aftermath of the Inflation Reduction Act, which offered tax credits meant to incentivize private investment in clean energy, most of the new clean energy projects were located in districts represented by Republican House members, including Lauren Boebert, ironically enough, according to a study in September by advocacy group Climate Power. This is not something that is collected and concentrated in blue cities. It's really spread throughout the country. So this goes back to what President Biden was talking about when he ran for office. He said he was going to be a president for everybody. It's not like he's, withholding funds from red states for not just with the Inflation Reduction Act, but also the infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure law, the CHIPS and Science Act. A lot of these things, there are semiconductor chips that are opening in Ohio. That's a red state. Not quite as red as Republicans like to have you believe, but it is a red state. He is governing in ways where the positivity and the positive benefits of his agenda will be felt by all 50 states, including states that not only didn't vote for him, but are led by, fascistic cult leaders and, MAGA cultists in the Republican Party who actively oppose his agenda. And we've done videos about that too, where people like Mike Johnson or Ron DeSantis or other Republican legislators will not only vote against President Biden's agenda, will not only campaign against it and decry it as socialism and Marxism, but then when the time comes to spend the money to make the investments, they are sure to be there on camera and to try to take credit for it. That's how you know the president's agenda is objectively better than theirs, because they're desperate to take credit for it while also trying to avoid the political consequence from their rightward flank of working with it. So I think Bill Maher did a great job there, calling it out, shredding the Republican lies about the president's record. And we need to do that more often. And I think people like Bill Maher, who are watched very often by the Fox Propaganda Network and right-wingers and centrists, that's a good vehicle to do that because he's able to get that message in front of them. Let me know what you think in the comments.